Welcome to Music and Medicine on Monday, a collaboration between the College of Medicine and the School of Music here at the University of Iowa. This program is designed to help musicians play and to stay healthy. This video is supplemented with more written detail online through the Iowa Protocols, which is a free medical website. You can find that resource at the QR code or website address displayed, or just search for Music and Medicine on Monday and Iowa. We're coming to you from the recital hall in the beautiful Voxman School of Music building at the University of Iowa. My name is Harry Hoffman, and I'm a physician at the University of Iowa, with our featured performer today, Michael Hill, a fourth-year double major in music education and percussion performance. Today's episode addresses playing marimba with a focus on healthy technique. With us today are Michael's mentor, Dan Moore, professor of percussion at the University of Iowa, and special guest, Dr. Andy Harnsberger of Lee University in Tennessee, who is internationally known as a performer, composer, and educator who offers perspective of one who quit playing due to overuse and then recovered for a full career for the past decade and a half. With us today is also Dr. Ernie Found, a professor of orthopedic surgery at the University of Iowa. Ernie is also a musician, playing popular music and jazz. Michael, before you play your piece, can you tell us what drew you into a career as a musician, how you chose percussion, marimba? I understand double bass is part of your repertoire, and what your future plans are.
Yeah, so starting out, my mom and dad both were involved heavily in music. My dad marched drum corps, my mom went into music education, and when I was born till about middle school, I'd go with my mom to every little musical activity she had. The most frequent one was me showing up with her to the high school. She would teach the drum line, and then after, she'd take me to preschool.
Oh, wow.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's early training.
Yeah. Then after that, I started double bass in fourth grade, which was probably a little too big for me at the time. And then after that, I did baritone for a week in fifth grade before.
One full week.
Yeah, 1 full week, and then my mom had enough of that. So she's like, oh, you're gonna do percussion now. So then I switched to percussion. The reason I'm so focused on marimba is because in 8th grade, I started doing drum corps, and I wasn't like big enough to hold the snare drums or the bass drums or whatever, so they put me in the front ensemble, and yeah, that was pretty fun. I did that from 2016 till this past summer, so about 9 years. Yeah, and that's what drew me into marimba and just the whole musical aspect of it. And that along with my mom being in music education led me to come here for music education.
And you have plans to be a music educator and performer?
Yeah, my plans currently, after I student teach next fall, is to go into a master's for performance, and then come back after that and teach. And
perform as well?
Yeah, yes.
Great. Can you tell us about the music that you'll be playing and why you chose it?
Yeah, the piece I'm playing is Square One by Joey Ang. And the reason I chose it is because he actually released it in October of this year, and about a week later I saw a video of him playing it, and it just struck me because it was so musical while also being extremely challenging. That's one of the biggest aspects of marimba. It's hard to have a piece sound really good and also be really challenging for the performer.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the marimba and what's the difference between a glockenspiel, a xylophone, a vibraphone, and a marimba, which I understand 99% of the world is a little bit cloudy on.
This is an oft-asked question, and absolutely. People will come up to the marimba player and say, that's a really nice-looking xylophone you got there. I think there's even a guy that has a business where he has a T-shirt that says, it's not a xylophone, that's the T-shirt that he sells. So that's our most common response. But the xylophone and the marimba are related. They're part of the same family. I mean, we have the marimba is part of a family of instruments that we call either keyboard percussion instruments or mallet percussion instruments because of the mallets that we used to play them with. You know, that's the genus kind of the family. And then within that we have woods and metals. So the metal ones are the glockenspiel that you mentioned, the tubular bells like the big church chimes, and the vibraphone, which is kind of a modern jazz instrument. So those are our metals. And then the woods are the xylophone and the marimba. And so that's how we sort of separate them. The marimba is, I guess, the larger cousin to the xylophone. Not to get too technical, but the xylophone and the marimba are actually tuned differently to give them their characteristic sound. The xylophone, which we hear in orchestral music, Carnival of the Animals, a lot of classical music has that sort of tinkly xylophone part. Well, the xylophone bars are tuned at the fifth, that is the first overtone. So it has a thinner kind of tone. The marimba is tuned to the overtone series, which is first an octave, then a fifth, and a fourth, and a third, and on up. So the first overtone that you hear on the xylophone is a fifth above the bass, and the first overtone you hear on a marimba is an octave above it. So it has a warmer, more resonant sound. It rings a little bit longer, and you'll hear that in the piece that Michael's going to play. And the other thing that's to bear in mind about the marimba, and from a health standpoint, certainly, is it's big. And you'll see that right away. It's over 8.5 feet long. And you'll see that Michael has to sort of traverse that entire 8.5 feet over the course of this piece. And so that kind of brings with it some inherent physicality that we just have to move a lot to get around on it. And we'll talk a little bit more about the stance and the grip and those kind of things later, I think.
Terrific. Well, that'll lead us right into a wonderful performance, and maybe we'll take a pause for Michael to get set up and play the name of the song?
Square One.
Square One. Well, that was great, Michael. Before proceeding with comments from Ernie, I'd ask for you, Dan, and Andy to talk about some of the physical challenges that playing the marimba can pose. I know, conferring with Andy previously, I understand the marimba was meant for people that are 5'6". Do you want to comment on that and adjusting things, Andy?
Early on in manufacturing of marimba, in this country especially, the marimba was meant for players that were between 5'3" and 5'6". And if you were taller than that, then you had to lean over to play the instrument. But now we have height adjustable instruments that work well for anybody of any height. For example, I have a student who is 6'8", and the marimba will raise high enough for his height to accommodate him.
And Dan and Michael, you're going to talk about the reach and the movement that you have on this huge instrument.
Yeah, one of the things that you notice, and that was a good job there, Michael. It's almost like the first time I've ever heard that piece, right? So yeah, Michael and I've been working on this piece together for quite a while, and one of the things that you probably noticed right away is the spread to get the mallets farther away from each other. There are moments where you're playing, almost as wide as your arms can go. And one of the examples that we show is like, Michael, can you play the lowest note and the highest note on this instrument at the same time? Not quite. So you're going to need another. We're going to somehow get you another 6 inches so you can get those last 3 notes there on the instrument, and that's one of the inherent difficulties. And what Harry, you already mentioned that regardless of your height, we do spend an inordinate amount of time looking down, right? The head is at kind of an angle, sometimes as much as 45 degrees down. And that would be something that we should probably talk about in terms of marimba health, is just that angle that the neck is at, kind of holding that head up in that position for all that time. And then also kind of the idea of just getting your footwork going. It seemed very energetic, but it also seemed quite relaxed, right? I mean, it looked to us that you were like pretty relaxed while you were doing your thing, but it really wasn't all that relaxing, probably, right? Just the number of notes you had to play and all that kind of stuff, and how tight you have to hold on to the mallets. And people are often shocked at how hard you have to hold on or grip the mallet to be able to give the illusion of being that relaxed. So, Dr. Found, why don't you see if you could try to see if you could rest that.
I'm amazed. I mean, to try to pull this thing apart, I feel like I'm working in my morning workout, and that's muscle strain, muscle usage from here all the way down the extremity, but obviously particularly mainly here in the forearm.
Right.
That is, and to be able to do this and this and this and this alternatingly, it's very remarkable. But upper extremity strength is key, no doubt.
We talked about how you're holding on to the mallets. Maybe we can do a close-up to show the calluses that you've developed. And you have a special name for this, Dan?
I've always known them as mallet calluses, or as the calluses that you build up, and sort of the name that they've been given, and I guess it's by just drum corps people, because that's where I knew it from, and that's where that term came from. We just shortened it to mallee-callie, right? So a mallet callus becomes a mallee-callie, and it's sort of like a badge of honor, right? to have a mallee-callie.
So it's all yours, is all within the soft tissue, the skin and the tissue below. Did you get blisters here early on much at all? Yeah, I would think so.
A lot of the times we get a blister and then a callus and then like another blister all stacked up.
Did you go through the Band-Aid stage and wrapping stage and things like that?
We would use stick tape sometimes, which is like electrical tape, which is
not
the best method. But
not the best, but it would help get you through things.
So Andy, I understand you've participated in 5 or 6 podcasts featuring problems that caused you to quit playing for about 3.5 years. Problems resulting from maybe overdoing it with traveling and playing the marimba in about 80 recitals in 1 year. Do you want to comment on that, perhaps in the context of that beautiful performance by Michael?
Sure. First, Michael, let me say that it was fantastic. You did a great job. lots of different things going on in that piece, and we can talk about those in a little while. But yeah, when I began my career, I was not a full-time professor. I was just a traveling musician, traveling marimba player, and had worked my way up to averaging 30 to 40 recitals a year. In addition to the other symphony work that I was doing, and I was also playing in a band called the Jack Daniels Silver Cornet Band, which was a brass band, and I played keyboard percussion in that as well. In the season of 2005, 2006, I decided that I really wanted to push myself and go for it, doing something that I didn't think anybody had ever done on marimba, and that was I was going to double my output. And so I booked a tour over an 8-month period of time, and I played 80 marimba recitals. And that was in addition to the symphony work again, and playing in the Jack Daniels band. So it was a very busy 8-month period. And my last marimba concert in that season was May 5th of 2006. And a week later, I sold my marimba and I moved to the beach. Just the physical toll that it took on my body, being in the car and driving to the different locations, different venues, it just really wore me out. A lot of times you get to a place and you set up your marimba and you just have to play, and then you have to tear it down, pack it up, put it in your car, and drive to the next gig. And that just got to be too much. And by the end of that tour, I was literally forcing myself through the pieces, through the music. I physically was unable to do a lot of the things that should have come very easily. And it just took a toll on my hands, but it also took a mental toll as well. So I took the next 3 years and decided that I needed to do something about the way I was playing and heal myself. So I saw a occupational therapist and started working on rehabilitating. I did a lot of icing. I did a lot of stretching. I've written articles about my progress, and yeah, I try to go around and talk about this as much as I can, because when you're young, like Michael, you're Superman and you can do anything. And even at the age of 40, when I did my 80 concerts, I still thought I was Superman, but at the end, I definitely wasn't. And I needed to regroup and retrain myself and basically come up with a better plan. And that's what I did. And it took 3.5 years, but in 2010, I came back strong and started playing again. Now I don't do nearly as many recitals because I'm full-time professor at Lee. And if I can get out 10 to 15 times a year, I'm really happy about that.
Can you talk about how you changed? What is it that you changed specifically?
Sure. The first thing that I did was learn how to stretch before I do anything. Actually, before I even stretch, if hot water is available, I am submersing my hands in hot water, and I'm trying to stretch out my hands, but also I'm stretching out my entire body, because as you saw from Michael's performance, we use a lot of large muscle movements. It's not just your hands that are being taxed. You've got to have good mobility in your lower body, which means your hamstrings have to be stretched out. Your lower back has to be stretched out. Your upper back and shoulders need to be relaxed, because all of that stuff, all of those muscles are being used. And so I learned from the occupational therapist based out of Nashville, Tennessee. She really, it should have really been something that I was aware of before then, but as percussionists, we always just focus on our hands. We don't really focus on the other parts of our body. We don't really think we're using them until it's evident that we have been and you're injured. So I learned how to stretch, and I developed a daily routine, which was exercises used for warming up and developing my technique and achieving good sounds on the instrument. And that's something that I do every single day still. If I have 30 minutes to practice, I'm only doing my stretching and my daily routine. And that's, I think, the single most important ingredient we have as percussionists for longevity and injury prevention. The other thing that I do on a regular basis, almost daily, sometimes I can't get to it, but I ice my hands with therapy mitts every night, 15 to 20 minutes. And as percussionists, Michael, having done drum corps, Dan, drum corps, you know the amount of shock that your hands go through in a daily practice session. Your hands are absorbing a tremendous amount of shock throughout the practice session. And so what that does is create swelling, and you have to get that swelling down. And so that's what I do every night. And those things have actually turned my playing around to a whole nother level. I thought I was good before, but even in my late 50s now, I'm playing better than I ever have.
Well, maybe we can involve Ernie in the discussion from the orthopedic standpoint as far as the approach you're taking. I'm sure he's going to applaud it, but then ask for some other considerations, such as medical treatment with anti-inflammatories or steroids, or taking it to the next level. When do you consult an orthopedic surgeon? When do you consult an occupational medicine?
That's always a bit of a dilemma. And we always have to be balancing the difference between burn and pain. Burn is, I feel it here within the muscles, or the glute muscles, or the back muscles, and you feel the burn. We all, feel the burn is a subconscious thing that everybody doing their weights in the morning are concerned about. Pain is a little different, though. When you feel the burn, that's for the moment, for the most part, and then you stop. Your body says, I've had enough, and you stop, and the burn disappears. Pain, though, is a little more involved, a little more complex. It involves a lot of the inflammatory process that Andy was alluding to and so forth. And pain can be present when you're not utilizing your extremities and your body. Nighttime, socially and so forth, where you're having that. And when it starts to get into the pain environment, that's when treatments can be very helpful. Clearly, with most everything in health, prevention, if you can. And he hit it on the head. In our youth and our vitality, we're all impervious to harm. And I'm feeling great, and I worked out 8 hours yesterday, and I'm still feeling great. So that is so critical. When the pain kind of comes along, that's when some type of intervention is probably worth it. Anti-inflammatory medication can perhaps help to some degree. Again, anti-inflammatory medication is not something that people get formally addicted to, but maybe in the acute setting it can be of some help, but using it chronically, it probably is not something that's in the long run beneficial. When dysfunction starts to come along, and it's, boy, this is bothering me so bad that I can't perform, then we move into the little more aggressive things. One of them, oftentimes, again, what is so important is the appropriate diagnosis. What is the problem? And what healthcare professional one seeks should be centered on someone who is intimately involved with those processes. Occupational therapists, many of them are superb. But if we're getting into tendon issues and so forth, oftentimes seeing a hand specialist, more as much so to get a proper diagnosis and understanding of what the issues are is important. But when the acute problems come along, and it's so much that it's preventing participation, that's when oftentimes some type of a corticosteroid injection, again, depending on the very specific diagnosis, can be a benefit, particularly to some of the tendon issues and entrapment syndromes and things. What role does surgery play? Surgery is, even though I make a living as a surgeon, the surgery is way down at the end of the spectrum. That's for I can't, I haven't been able to. Every time I try to get back just a little bit, it's there again, it's preventing me. That's when consideration, with again a very specific diagnosis, that surgery can play a role.
Can I ask you a question? One of the kind of things that I've heard, or kind of we've thought all along, is a cortisone shot is not really solving the problem. It's dealing with the pain.
You're right. A cortisone injection, cortisone being a strong inflammatory, and basically its whole goal is to acutely and specifically in a specific area, rather immediately cut down on the inflammatory process.
So you could think that you feel great and everything's going good, but you could still be hurting yourself.
That potentially, and you're right, and you feel great, and then all right, let's get right back into it, and my body will heal, and off we go, and then it repeats itself. People worry a lot about, is the cortisone injection doing something detrimental to the tendon or to the tendon sheath or the tissues in the area. Only on repeated basis. How many cortisone injections can you have? For example, Dequervain's tenosynovitis in the forearm. 2, maybe 3 over a period of a year or 2. But 2 or 3 a year over a period of 4 years, yes, then it's going to start to have some detrimental effect.
So in a case where you're trying to get to a senior recital or a graduate recital, and you can't really stop practicing for 6 weeks, leading up to that.
That would be a time that an injection could be of some benefit. Splinting, to back up a little bit, in front of when the symptoms start to come, splinting can have a significant amount of help, particularly again when we're talking about some of the tendon inflammatory issues or carpal tunnel syndrome and things. Splinting, which is basically rest, forceful rest, it can be very beneficial, and particularly splinting at nighttime, because in the night we put our extremities in a variety of unconscious positions, and keeping them in a more stable position can be of great benefit.
So there are occupational therapists, there are physical therapists, there's chiropractors, there are sports medicine specialists, there's orthopedic surgeons. Who would you contact? Say, Andy says, I'm going to do 80 gigs in the next 8 months. I want to meet with somebody to make sure I don't hurt myself. Who do they go?
Well, that's a whole spectrum of healthcare these days. I think, again, back to probably the most important thing is getting a reasonable and understandable diagnosis of what the issue is. And quite frankly, starting out, when the symptoms are fairly mild, and you need to know about what stretching you need to be doing and what exercises need to be doing and what role does icing play, which is huge. One of the therapists who do a lot of hand work and see a lot of people with hand problems. If you're thinking about more aggressive things, then I think a hand surgeon or someone who involved in hands, who has seen the hand inside and out, literally, and understands what the issues are. Not that the ultimate outcome is going to be you're coming to have surgery, but they can provide a very good understanding of what the issue is and what's the best way to go.
So my understanding is one dichotomy is that the smaller muscles, the hands and the arms, the upper extremity, occupational therapist, the bigger back, lower leg type of muscle, physical therapist. Is that a reasonable? That's
a reasonable consideration. The other thing we got to realize that within the hand itself, there aren't many muscles in the hand itself. There are some small little muscles in between the metacarpal bones, but what is moving the fingers and the digits are the tendons that are attached to the muscles that are up here into the forearm. And so if it's a muscle issue, we need to be sending our attention here in the forearm. Tendon issues are what can occur down in the hand itself. But the hand, other than in the thenar eminence, which are the muscles responsible for moving the thumb, and the hypothenar eminence, the muscles responsible for helping moving the little finger, those are bigger muscles in the hand. But for the middle 3 digits, again, there aren't muscles down here in the fingers. very small muscles in the hand, they help do this kind of thing. But in terms of the big flexion, extension, wrist flexion, wrist extension, that is all musculature in the forearm, and then continuing up the extremity.
Great. Any more questions for discussion? Maybe I'd have one for Andy. Is your warm-up routine 30 minutes?
It depends on the day. Some days you feel better than others and you can get moving a little bit faster, but typically it's designed to be about 25 to 30 minutes, yes.
And you mentioned if you only have 30 minutes to practice, you may not get past your warm-up.
That's correct.
That shows the importance, I think, or emphasizes it for your career. You have other questions or comments?
Well, I thought it was interesting that Andy, when you mentioned that you already knew probably what you should be doing or what you're supposed to be doing, but it took a professional, finding someone to tell you what you already knew.
Yeah, when you're younger, you just think you know everything and everything's going to be fun. And it's like when you're in college and your teacher tells you that slow practice is going to be beneficial, but you go into the practice room and you run your piece over and over because you think you know better.
Yeah.
Well, terrific. Well, thank you, Michael, for a great performance, and Dan and Andy and Ernie for your insights. So additional details regarding this and other episodes of Music and Medicine on Mondays can be accessed by visiting the Iowa Protocols by the QR code displayed or the website address, or simply by searching the web for the Iowa Protocols Music and Medicine on Mondays.